I love this team. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Lombardi Time Brews, where I'm your host, John Delray. That's right. The Green Bay Packers pulled off the upset. They did the improbable. They did the unthinkable. Who cares? They did it. Winning against the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. Yes, indeed. The Green Bay Packers now sit at 6-6 in the 7th wildcard spot. That's right. If the season ended today, the Green Bay Packers would be a playoff team. Who in the world saw that coming just one short month ago? But here we are. This is an entirely different Packers team. And as I said in the very beginning, I love this team. Like in real time, we've watched them develop, mature, bond all together. And it's truly been an incredible experience. For all the frustration earlier in the year, this is the reward because you're seeing the light bulbs come on. You know, it's really neat, not totally unlike being in a classroom. The task now for the Packers happens to be consistency. It's already being talked about that Green Bay is playing like a bona fide playoff team. And not only that, but for the top seeds, they're one of those teams that you just don't want to go against in the playoffs. Because if the Packers show up like they did last night, they can contend with anyone. It's now been 3 straight weeks of winning to get them back to 6-6, 5 straight weeks of radical improvement. But now the standards are set. You want to make the playoffs, that's the way that you need to play. It becomes the standard, not the exception. And to be completely honest, like after this last 3-week stretch, it's not at all an exaggeration to say that over the remaining schedule, keep in mind the remaining strength of schedule is very much in favor of the Packers. It's actually going to be a letdown if they lose any remaining game on the schedule. Because we're looking at the list of teams that they're going against, and it's the Bucks, it's the Giants, it's the Panthers, it's the Bears. They should be able to beat any one of those teams. So now it's going to feel like a letdown if they lose. Now, I still think that they lose one. I just don't see this 9-game run the table set to end the season. But the fact that we're now talking about like any given week, a loss would be a letdown. That's contender talk, I do believe. Keyshawn Nixon said after the game last night that he doesn't know what it is about the G on the helmet, but it takes players and it makes them great players. And frankly, that's the rallying cry right there. It doesn't really matter who suits up. Whoever it is that puts on that helmet has the chance to now do something special every single week. Put on that helmet, you immediately become something bigger than yourself. And it's pretty impressive just how far these baby Packers have come so quickly. So let's dive right in. There are 4 keys that we talked about in the game review that we're going to look at and say, did the Packers actually achieve these keys on their way to the upset win? Then I've also got some shout outs for you as well as just a couple today. Definitely more shout outs than get outs, but we are going to get there as well. So first, in terms of key review, number 1, the Green Bay Packers needed to win the turnover battle. If Patrick Mahomes was going to give them to you, best not miss. And the Packers didn't. They officially won the turnover battle 1-0, getting that 1 interception by Keyshawn Nixon. And that was a ball that Mahomes gave him. I think there was a miscommunication with the wide receiver, but regardless, Packers are the ones that came up with the ball. And on the other side, clean football from J. Love. No interceptions, no fumbles by the Packers. Fumbles lost anyway. So very, very encouraging to see another turnover win for the Green Bay Packers. Number 2. The coverage on the back end needs to be better than it was against Detroit because otherworldly pass rush may not be sustainable. I talked about how against Detroit, the pass rush was out of its mind for the vast majority of the game. And that allowed some errors to occur in the back end that Jared Goff wasn't able to take advantage of. I was very concerned that the pass rush may not be as good as it was against Detroit again. And Patrick Mahomes is no Jared Goff. He'll more than likely make you pay for busted coverages on the back end. And I would say, did they achieve this? Kinda. There still were blown coverages, lackadaisical play, passive play calling, which we're going to be talking about later, because Travis Kelce was just like wide open in an ocean of just grass around him way too many times. But So, like, there's still room for improvement, and and this is probably being overly harsh. The pass rush did do a good job. Like, don't get me wrong, it was more present in the first half than it was the second. The coverage was better, but there are still lapses to correct. So, did they do it? Yeah, it was better, just not all the way yet. Number three, stop plays dead in their tracks. And this was kind of hit or miss. They did it in one regard, but not necessarily the other. Why was this so important? Because Kansas City receivers led the league in yak. Patrick Mahomes was one of the toughest quarterbacks to bring down in the NFL. But Pacheco was just running like a madman. So let's see what the Packers actually did. Now, I can't say that they really stopped Pacheco that well. He ended the game with 18 carries for 110 yards, 1 touchdown, and a 6.1 yard per carry average. And sometimes it was pretty open lanes that got him those yards. But for the most part, this was a man that was just shredding people, like shredding Green Bay Packer defenders left and right. He didn't look top 15 in yards after contact. He straight up looked like an elite runner in that regard. The Chiefs undoubtedly have a baller at running back who, fortunately for the Packers, turns out to be a bit of a brawler too, since he threw a punch and got ejected. Whatever, we'll take it however we can. As for the wide receivers, though, or I should lump in Travis Kelce in that regard as well, because Chiefs receivers led the NFL in yards after the catch coming into this game. And did the Packers shut that down? Yes, they did. Patrick Mahomes averaged only 10 yards per completion. Rice was never able to break one free. Kelce, almost any time he did make a catch, was brought down fairly quickly. The Packers swarmed incredibly well. And while there certainly still were missed tackles, most of them against Pacheco, at least in the passing game, they really, really did their job. Then the last portion was being able to bring down Patrick Mahomes. He's got the best pressure to sack rate in the NFL, meaning dude can get pressured, but it's not going to turn into a sack. And they started out the game incredibly well in this regard, getting 2 quick first half sacks. But as the game wore on, Mahomes did get more elusive. The pressure did become a little bit less. Packers ended the game with 3 sacks, which is still more than their season average of 2.4. So still a win in that regard, no doubt about it. But it would be kind of negligent to say that the pressure, it did become a little less frequent as the game wore on. And then key number 4, protect. Jordan Love needed to be kept safe in order to function against one of the best defenses in the NFL. The Kansas City Chiefs were averaging 3.4 sacks per game coming into this one. And not only do they have George Karlaftis on the edge, they've also got one of the best interior rushers, if not the best interior pass rusher in the NFL in Chris Jones. And that was a new kind of test for the Green Bay Packers. Ultimately, Chris Jones did perform very well against John Runyan Jr., Sean Ryan, and Josh Myers. Now, this isn't exactly unexpected. Like, he's Chris Jones, and it's John Runyan Jr., Sean Ryan, and Josh Myers. They're in different tiers, right? But ultimately, the Packers only gave up 4 quarterback hits and 2 sacks. Of course, that's under the Chiefs' average to this point. And I would say that the protection was better again, kind of like the same thing as the pass rush. It was better earlier. As it got on, it got a little bit tougher. It did have a lapse there in about the third quarter. And I did feel as though Jordan Love, I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, did get a little run happy. But ultimately, did they protect Jordan Love? Yes, they did. So let's get to our shout outs. And shout out number 1 should be fairly obvious. It's the quarterback of the future, Jordan Love. 25 of 36, 267 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Again, with no interceptions. His 4th game this year with 3 touchdowns and no picks. One of only 2 quarterbacks in the NFL to tout that trait thus far. The other one being Brock Purdy. The Green Bay Packers dropped more points on the Chiefs defense than anyone else this year. The Chiefs came into this game giving up just over 16 points per game. That was 3rd best in the NFL. And then the Packers dropped 27 on them like nobody's business. In back-to-back weeks, Jordan Love, going against Detroit, had one of the 3 best quarterback performances against Detroit to this point in the year. And I've seen some scuttlebutt coming into this Chiefs game about how, like, well, the Lions defense isn't great. This year it's been good. So you can't use that. So they were like, all right, let's see it against the Chiefs. This is a new test. And I agree. Chiefs are better than the Lions, but it's like the Lions were nothing. And then all of a sudden we get into the Chiefs game and he has the best quarterbacking performance pretty unequivocally. Like, go look at the stats. Yeah, it's pretty certain that Jordan Love just turned in the best quarterback performance against the Kansas City Chiefs defense this year. So, judging him by the absolute highest of standards, because if anyone knows high standards with quarterback play, it's Green Bay Packer fans. We've been rather blessed in that regard. So, let's judge him by the absolute highest standards. And let's say there were probably still a couple throws in that game that he'd like to have back, that he'd like to pinpoint accuracy just a little bit more. And like I mentioned earlier, I thought there was a real difference in his pocket composure. In half number one, it looked like a tremendous strength. We were talking about that on the watch party a lot. And then it did kind of, as the pressure began to lapse in half number two, I felt like there were a lot of throws where Love was dropping back and just taking off, specifically around the right tackle side of things. But I will say, too, in all fairness, going back and looking at the all 22, on a number of those plays that Love ditched out real fast, the receivers were not open and frankly had no real prayer of getting open. So I can at least understand it. Okay. But that's from the highest of standards. That's about all you've got. The rest of the play was incredibly well done. And now what's really perhaps most impressive about Love is things look like they're getting simpler and simpler for him, or more natural or easier. Choose whichever word you'd like. Because the truth is, what we're seeing now is the decision making is becoming less hesitant, the accuracy getting better. And we're seeing some of those schoolyard style traits that Jordan Love has always had. That was one of the attractive things about him in college. The being able to throw from any arm angle, the throwing it down the field with power. And that's still a work in progress. He seemed to still have that more in college than he does now. But what's cool is we're seeing the schoolyard traits begin to come out, and not in a reckless manner. It's beginning to look slightly like his predecessor, much to the disappointment of Bears fans. And by the way, miserable goat, because I know you're going to watch. You just started out the watch party yesterday saying the Dolphin fans were giving you crap and he needed to show out. I do hope he did you proud. Number two, shout out number two goes to, kind of in conjunction, a pairing here, A.J. Dillon and Matt LaFleur. It was well documented that A.J. Dillon was beat up, battered, bruised coming into this game. And every so often yesterday, it looked like it. Like he did a carry, got brought down, and the big man just got up. And you just saw like the joy of life evaporate out of that guy. It's just from being pummeled again and again, week in and week out. But ended the game with 18 carries for 73 yards. And again, he earned every single one of those 73 yards. And he deserves a shout out for that. He is playing much, much better. The other shout out goes to the coach, who is now 16-0 in December, but specifically here because of the creativity in the run game. It did help propel Dillon forward. In past weeks, I felt like there's been too much like, well, we got to run, so let's run. And then here's a halfback toss that's just run just like every halfback toss in the history of the league. Or here's a halfback dive. Dillon just run into people. Or even a draw. We'll buy you a millisecond of time, but then we're going to give you a draw. And then John Ryan Jr. is going to miss a block, or Josh Myers, something's going to go wrong, and then you're going to be absorbed 3 yards behind the line. But like, hey, we ran it. Finally, I felt like there was a good dose of creativity in the run game. We saw it even with the wrinkles of Jayden Reed being implemented in the backfield as well, and kind of like these end arounds. But really, even some of the carries for A.J. Dillon, there were more complex blocking schemes present, and they were executed well. Matt LaFleur, especially in the opening 15 plays of the game, the scripted 15, really felt like they went farther into the playbook, pulled out some plays that maybe would have been too complex to run a month ago. But the thing was, it was effective and executed well. They deserve credit for that. Number three, the receivers. Each one of the top 4 wide receivers on this team had some kind of holy crap moment. Dobbs on the 4th and 1, where Love off of his back foot just kind of said, screw it, Romeo's down there somewhere, phew, and threw a rainbow. Dobbs found that ball, then absorbed the hit from the safety and hung on to that ball. Then you've got Christian Watson showing his speed on the first touchdown and also fully extending for that second touchdown, which was an incredibly refreshing sight to see. Wicks consistently getting open. Like, I know there were people who loved Dontavian Wicks in the draft, but to envision his ability to get open as a rookie, I don't know as if anyone truly saw that coming to this extent. And then Jayden Reed, not the largest statistical day for Jayden Reed, but There is something when he gets the ball in his hands and into a little bit of space, he's one of those receivers that you just feel anything special could happen at any given time. Each one is unique. Each one has definitive traits that the other ones don't necessarily have. And what we're really saying here is rounded as a group. Even throw in Malik Heath as number 5 at this point for what he's doing. And you truly have the makings of something pretty special for the foreseeable future at the wide receiver position. Shout out number 4. That one goes to Joe Barry. Look, full credit where it's due. Joe turned up the aggression for most of the game. The portion that doesn't fit in the most we'll be talking about in a minute, but don't get me wrong. The Packers do blitz more than a lot of other teams in the league. It's probably more than you think. It's just they're blitzes that don't do a whole lot at a lot of different times, fairly simple blitzes. But Kenny Clark has said a bunch. He's talking specifically about run defense, but really take it and blow it up over the whole defense. Defense is a mentality, right? And Joe Barry instilled in them the mentality yesterday, going against a team that leads the league in yards after catch, all these different things, instilled in them the mentality of like, go get them. Don't allow them to come to you today. Go get them. And it worked. If we're going to critique Joe Barry when he's too passive, then he also deserves credit when the defense is more aggressive. And it certainly was for the majority of the game. Number 5, Anders Carlson. It's been a tough go for little buddy as of late. Like, there's no doubt about that. He's been in the get-outs for a couple weeks now, but perfect day for the kicker. 4 of 4 on his kicks with 2 field goals, or I should say three extra points, 2 field goals. There we go. Sorry about that. It was a nice day when the Packers needed all their kicks. He hit all the kicks. So very, very good to see. His kickoffs were also just straight down. They didn't tempt the sideline like they did a few weeks ago in Pittsburgh. So really, really good stuff from Carlson. Number 6, the cornerbacks. Valentine's playing out of his mind right now. He led the team in tackles last night with 5. Nixon had that great interception. Valentine's coverage of MVS. Yes, there was the one pass interference. Okay, but beyond that one, Valentine kind of made Packers fans remember a little bit too much maybe what some of those deep balls to MVS look like. And part of that was due to the coverage of Valentine. What the Packers are doing with their secondary, with this island of misfit toys, no Jair, Rasul's gone, no Stokes, like you're left with 7th round pick Carrington Valentine, who was a practice squad player to start the year, Nixon, your slot guy who's been so up and down, and then this rotating room of safeties. It's commendable. Are there still coverage lapses? Yes. Do they have to shore those up? Yes. But the level of play absolutely is commendable. The young guys are hungry. And it shows. It's impressive. Now, for the get outs, not surprisingly, there's fewer of these than the shout outs. I'm really not going to dwell here, but there are a couple things that need to be said. Number 1, 3rd and 18, or just the entire opening drive to start the second half from the Packers defense. I talked earlier about how like they deserve credit for playing aggressively and Joe Barry instilling that in, except for this drive. This drive, it's like he kind of just went into his old habits, went back, wanted us to relive a memory of him just saying, all right, everybody, let them come to you. No, don't do that. The Chiefs were dead to rights, pinned way back, attempting a comeback with one of the greatest quarterbacks ever, and a QB who our defense has actually gotten after pretty well all game, all throughout the first half. So what do? On 3rd and 18, rush 3. Rush 3 and give Patrick Mahomes all the time in the world to dance around, begin to scramble, make the rookie safety commit a little bit, dump it over to the top to the world's best tight end. Like it's just so easy. I hated this play call. I hated the vast majority of this drive from a defensive standpoint because, again, it was passive versus aggressive, and they were incredibly passive on that drive. And I get it. You're fearful of the big play. But, and we talked about this on the watch party, like you were doing one thing all game, and it was working. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, maybe they'll see that coming. Maybe they'll see an aggressive defense coming. Let's go to the polar opposite side of the spectrum and allow them to just walk through 3rd and 18 instead. No, you picked basically the worst possible time to do it. You were only up 8 and you let them back into the game. It was very, very disappointing drive for the entire defense, but especially the play calling from Joe Barry. And look, on that particular play, Anthony Johnson Jr. bit forward when he shouldn't have bit forward. I am sure he did what he is not coached to do, because it really, like we acknowledged on the watch party last night, if you're the safety in that situation, especially on a distance like 3rd and 18, you got to let Mahomes pass the line of scrimmage and make it a definitive scramble before you step up to get Mahomes. And he didn't do that. And that's why Mahomes is able to just drop it in a bucket right over the top. Anthony Johnson Jr. shouldn't have really been put in that spot in the first place because of that passive play calling. So did he mess up? Yes. Whose fault is it really? His, but still also the coordinators. Number 2, Patrick Taylor, or the coaches who told Patrick Taylor to stay in bounds. You're up 14-6. You're nearing the end of the first half. Chiefs get the ball to start the second half. Packers offense chugging along. No real issues. They're doing what they did most of the half. They're moving the ball. You're on the Chiefs side of the field. Touchdown drive looks very possible, but a field goal looks downright likely. And all of a sudden, you got 2 Patrick Taylor plays in a row where he either, there's 2 theories on this, where he either, 1, stays in bounds, fights for extra yards, 2, was instructed to stay in bounds to run out the clock and not give the Chiefs any chance to mount a last-second drive. Here's the issue. With an 8-point lead, it's still only a 1-score game. I get being concerned about the Chiefs, like doubling up, having too much time left on the clock. But you know what else is a really good deterrent to not allowing the Chiefs to come back? Having more points than the Chiefs. So we could have actually kept up with the mantra of all gas, no brake, and actually tried to put another touchdown on the board. There wasn't any reason at that point in the game, I felt, that the Packers should have suddenly kicked it into conservative gear. They were moving the ball fine. Continue to move the ball, because what happened was basically the worst case scenario. In that, Patrick Taylor stayed in bounds. The clock ran down. Then you had more screw-ups. Ultimately, all of it led to 0 points and a punt. Now, it did serve the purpose of the Chiefs not having any time to try to come back. Didn't give them any time to mount a drive. They just had to basically take a knee down at the 2-yard line, thanks to an excellent punt by Dan Whelan and coverage by Rudy Ford. So in that way, did it work? Yeah. But you had the chance to put points on the board. Do that. That's the preferred angle. So there's a difference between concerned and scared. And I go back to that a lot from a coaching perspective. Difference between concerned and scared. You can acknowledge the reality of going against Patrick Mahomes, but you cannot allow that to change your decision-making to play scared. And I felt like you had a chance for all gas, no brake, and instead you went scared. Number 3, the refs. Yeah, I actually thought that this was a pretty well-refereed game, pretty much all the way through, until the last 2 minutes. Were there little things? Yeah, little. But then, like, the last 2 minutes was an abject disaster for both teams, right? I'm not, yes. Did Carrington Valentine probably commit pass interference against MVS? Yeah, he hugged his head. Did Jonathan Owens deserve an unnecessary roughness on Patrick Mahomes? No. No, he did not. And I get the call. Like I say this on Watch Party 2. Like, you have one of the league's bona fide stars running clearly out of bounds. He's not out of bounds yet, but he's clearly going that way. And then Owens topples him over. But it's also not like Owens was headhunting either. So, like, I get the call. It's wrong. I get how you made it. It's still wrong. And then, of course, the pass interference. It was a very, very poorly officiated end of the game. And in the final 2 minutes, we want to hear the refs less. They seem to go the wrong way on that one. And we heard from them more in the final 2 minutes than we had heard from them all game. So, that's it. That's it for shout-outs and get-outs. If you think that I missed one, or you think that you've got another one, let me know in the comments. Just be nice, okay? Be nice about it. But let me know in the comments what you think about what your shout-outs and get-outs were. On Wednesday, coming up later this week, I do have a midday appearance. I'm doing an appearance for Bleacher Report. Again, my policy when I go other places that has everything sticks to fact-based, remember? So we are sticking to that on Bleacher Report. I'm going to be there for a midday appearance on Wednesday, doing a midweek update as well as a Q&A. And then, don't fret, if you don't go to the Bleacher Report app, if you can't see me there, I will be here 4:30 as normal, 4:30 Lambeau time, doing a live Q&A with all of you here on the YouTube channel. If you're one of my Spotify or podcast listeners, come give YouTube a try. Come look at my face. Maybe it won't turn you away. Here's hoping. But come check that out. Wednesday, 4:30, I'll be here for a live Q&A. I do hope sincerely that everyone out there is having a fantastic Victory Monday. Hope you have a great week. I will see you on Wednesday. And as always, go Pack Go.